The late afternoon sun hung low as Ethan Parker tightened the straps on his daughter's pink backpack. 8-year-old Lily smiled up at him before skipping into the community library for her reading club. "I'll be right here when you're done," Ethan promised. Since losing his wife 3 years earlier, every promise mattered. Life as a single father wasn't easy. Between working long shifts as a mechanic and raising Lily, there wasn't much room for anything else. Still, he never complained. Lily was his entire world. With an hour to spare, Ethan walked toward the grocery store nearby. As he crossed the parking lot, he noticed an elderly man struggling to lift several heavy wooden boxes into an old pickup truck. Cars passed by, but no one stopped. The old man wiped sweat from his forehead and tried again. One box slipped from his hands, crashing onto the pavement. Without thinking twice, Ethan hurried over. "Sir, let me help you." The man looked up with tired eyes. "You don't have to. I'm sure you've got somewhere to be." "I do," Ethan replied with a warm smile. "But helping won't make me late." For the next 20 minutes, Ethan loaded heavy boxes, secured them with ropes, and even fixed a loose tailgate latch using a wrench he carried in his truck. The old man watched him carefully. "You're good with your hands." "I'm a mechanic." "And a good man," the stranger added quietly. When everything was finished, the elderly man reached into his wallet. "Please let me pay you." Ethan immediately shook his head. "No, sir. My dad taught me that kindness isn't something you charge for." For a long moment, the old man simply stared at him. Then he smiled. "Not many people still believe that." He extended his hand. "My name is Walter Bennett." "Ethan Parker." Walter nodded as though committing the name to memory. "I hope life rewards your kindness someday." Ethan laughed softly. "It already has. I get to go home to my daughter every night." Walter's eyes brightened. "You have a daughter?" "Lily. She's 8. You're raising her alone?" Ethan nodded. "It's not always easy, but she's worth every sacrifice." Walter looked unusually emotional. "Take good care of her." "I always will." The two men shook hands before Ethan headed back to the library, thinking nothing more of the encounter. Meanwhile, Walter remained seated inside his truck for several minutes, staring thoughtfully at the young father's fading figure. He reached for his phone and dialed a number. "I think," he said quietly, "I've finally met the man I was telling you about." On the other end of the call, a woman's curious voice replied. "Really, Dad? Tell me everything." Walter smiled as he watched Ethan walk hand in hand with little Lily toward the parking lot. "Some meetings," he whispered, "are arranged by fate." The next morning, Ethan was already under the hood of a customer's pickup truck when his phone buzzed. He wiped the grease from his hands and glanced at the screen. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello? Is this Ethan Parker?" "Yes. This is Walter Bennett. We met yesterday in the grocery store parking lot." Ethan smiled. "Of course. How are you, Mr. Bennett?" "I'm doing well, thanks to you. I was wondering if you'd have lunch with me today. There's something I'd like to discuss." Ethan hesitated. His lunch breaks were short, and every minute mattered. "I don't know. It won't take long," Walter said kindly. "Please." Something in the old man's voice convinced Ethan to accept. At noon, Ethan arrived at a quiet family restaurant downtown. Walter was already waiting at a corner table, dressed neatly in a navy blazer. Beside him sat a woman in her early 30s with chestnut-brown hair and gentle hazel eyes. As Ethan approached, Walter stood with a smile. "Ethan, I'd like you to meet my daughter Emily." Emily extended her hand. "It's nice to finally meet the man my father hasn't stopped talking about." Ethan laughed nervously. "I only helped him load a few boxes. My father says it was much more than that." They sat together, and conversation flowed more easily than Ethan expected. Emily worked as a children's librarian. The moment Ethan mentioned Lily's love of books, Emily's face lit up. "Really? What's her favorite?" "Charlotte's Web," Ethan answered. "She asks me to read it almost every night." Emily smiled warmly. That's been my favorite since I was little. Walter watched the conversation quietly, unable to hide his satisfaction. After lunch, Walter leaned forward. I owe you an explanation. Ethan looked puzzled. The boxes you helped me move weren't ordinary deliveries. They were supplies for our community education center. You run a charity? Walter nodded. My late wife and I started it 30 years ago. We help struggling families with tutoring, school supplies, and scholarships. Emily added softly. After Mom passed away, Dad devoted himself completely to keeping it alive. Walter looked directly at Ethan. When I saw you refuse money yesterday, I recognized something I've been searching for. And what's that? Ethan asked. Someone who helps because it's the right thing to do. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. I don't think I'm anyone special. Walter smiled. That's exactly why you are. Before they left, Emily handed Ethan a small invitation card. This Saturday we're hosting a family picnic for the children in our program. Lily would love it. Ethan thanked her, unsure whether he should go. Saturday arrived with bright sunshine. Lily raced across the park laughing with other children while Ethan helped volunteers set up tables and games. Watching him from across the lawn, Emily couldn't help but notice how naturally he cared for everyone around him, not for recognition, but simply because it was who he was. Walter noticed the look on his daughter's face. He smiled to himself. Perhaps fate had brought Ethan into their lives for a reason. Just then, Walter's phone rang. His expression changed the moment he answered. What? When? Are you certain? He slowly lowered the phone, his face pale. Emily hurried over. Dad, what's wrong? Walter looked at both of them with worried eyes. Our education center. He paused. May have to close forever. The laughter around them continued, but for the three of them, everything suddenly felt very different. Silence settled over the picnic table as Walter lowered his phone. Our biggest donor has withdrawn their support, he said quietly. Without that funding, the education center will have to close by the end of the month. Emily's eyes filled with disappointment. But hundreds of children depend on this place, she whispered. Walter nodded. I know. Ethan looked around the park. Children were laughing, reading books, and playing games, many of them wearing backpacks the center had provided. It wasn't just a building at risk. It was a lifeline for countless families. There has to be another way, Ethan said. Walter managed a faint smile. We've tried everything. That evening, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the center. After Lily went to bed, he opened his laptop and created a simple online fundraiser. He wrote about the kindness he had witnessed, the children whose lives were being changed, and why the community couldn't afford to lose such a special place. He shared the page on social media before going to sleep, expecting very little. The next morning, his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Neighbors shared the fundraiser. Former students posted heartfelt stories about how the center had changed their lives. Local businesses offered donations. Volunteers pledged their time. Even Ethan's customers placed collection jars on their counters. Within a week, thousands of people had contributed. When Walter saw the total, tears streamed down his face. I never imagined so many people still cared. They do, Ethan replied. Sometimes people just need someone to remind them that one act of kindness can inspire another. A few days later, the community gathered outside the education center for a celebration. Thanks to the overwhelming support, the center would remain open, not just for another month, but for years to come. Walter stepped onto the small stage. I've spent my life believing kindness creates ripples, he told the crowd. This young man proved it. He invited Ethan beside him as the audience applauded. Then Walter turned to his daughter with a knowing smile. Emily, I think there's something you've been meaning to say. Emily laughed, slightly embarrassed. There is. She faced Ethan. When Dad first told me about the stranger who refused payment just to help him, I thought he was exaggerating. Ethan smiled. I wish I could say I was that impressive. You are, Emily replied. Not because you helped him, but because that's simply who you are. Over the following months, Ethan and Emily spent more time together. They organized book drives, family events, and reading programs for the children. Lily adored Emily, who quickly became her favorite reading partner. One evening, after another successful fundraiser, the three of them sat on a park bench watching the sunset. Lily reached for Emily's hand. "Do you think you'll always be part of our family?" Emily looked at Ethan before answering. "I hope so." Ethan gently took Emily's hand and smiled. "So do I." A year later, surrounded by friends, volunteers, and dozens of children from the education center, Ethan and Emily were married in a small garden ceremony. As Walter watched his daughter walk down the aisle, he remembered the day a stranger had stopped to help him load a few heavy boxes. That single act of kindness had saved more than an education center. It had brought together a family that neither of them knew they were missing. Sometimes, the greatest rewards in life don't come from seeking happiness. They come from choosing kindness, one small act at a time.